And we are live. Hey, Mick. This
Hi,
is
David. How
Mick.
are you, man?
This is Mick Sullivan. A long time ago, Mick and I were in more regular contact. Mick, you are still very much involved in Kids Listen podcast, as well as just the podcast universe. Can you give us all an update as far as what's going on over at Kids Listen and kids podcasting in general? I'd be curious personally myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm actually currently the co-chair of Kids Listen,
Yes.
along with Allie Wilkinson, who has a show called Cool Facts About Animals with her kids, which is great. Um, and we've been busy. There's a lot. The group has grown. It's amazing how kids podcasting in general has really exploded, and more people are recognizing that it's a great platform to educate and entertain and just connect with kids and families. And we've done a lot of cool stuff. We actually just this year, it was a long project, but we back in January or February, we published our second survey. So we did a really deep study of like how families listen and like how they use podcasts, and it helped us tremendously, and it garnered a lot of interest from people either interested in kids podcasting or getting into it, all sorts of things like that. And in addition to that, we've got a lot of different initiatives. We're working a little bit with Common Sense Media.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
that's pretty exciting, right?
Yeah. So more to come on that. But we've been regularly advocating for it to be easy to find podcasts and for kids, and Apple is responding to that. I'm not saying we're the only people that made that happen, but we're a big force in the industry. So
for sure. No, I see the phrase "kids listen" all over the place now, and when I can't even remember when it got started. It was just a handful of us then, and then it was growing quite a bit. And just to be clear to everybody, is that Kids Listen is kind of a, how would you describe it? It's a collective support, advocacy, education for kids podcasting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a place for creators and people that are affiliated with kids podcasting. To kind of be a space to live in and share ideas and celebrate triumphs and and collectively buoy the ones who are in sorrow for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, we advocate for the platform and try to make it as valid as any other podcast subject. Target audience.
Hey, kids, if any of you are listening right now and you listen to kids podcasting, and I know you do, first of all, you should, if you don't already, find Mix, the Past and the Curious, and listen, and also give nice reviews, which most of them are, but every now and then someone gets on and has fun on the reviews, and all these creators read those, and they're real, and so take them seriously and really say some nice things there. It's not a place to just let your cat walk across the computer screen.
Yeah, and that's actually a really helpful way. If you have a podcast that you really like and you were like, how can I help them? It's subscribing and or following, I guess they call it now, and leaving a review are tremendously helpful. So always do that for the shows that you love.
For sure, and there's so many now, and it's really lovely to see in the top 10 regularly our Kids Listen folks that I'm familiar with. It's really great. I should say to everybody that's used to seeing me in front of my little blackboard, in a quiet environment, I'm in Virginia. I am traveling cross country with my older son, going to Washington, D.C. We traveled 12 hours yesterday. We're going to do another 5 in a little while. We did 4 this morning. And I'm in this beautiful little town of Abington, Virginia. Sweet little place. And so the sun is progressively getting higher up and shining on my face. So by the end of our little time together, there will be I will be cooked. So let's get into wonder. And that's what the theme of this week. And we were so excited to talk to you on a couple levels. First of all, we're going to have another conversation in our new Storying Project podcast, and we'll probably be talking a little bit more about history, I'm going to guess. So I am interested in hearing about your storytelling process as it involves history, because I've really that's been difficult for me to where the line is. But this one particular story about the Hubble telescope. Could you talk a little bit about that story? Is it up right now?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
most recent episode. Yeah, that's the episode from that's the most current one. Got to have a new one coming out next week. But yeah, when I talk about history, I mean, some of the things you already alluded to. It's there's a lot of challenges involved, because you know, especially if you're making things for kids, like, you want to tell a good story. Like, that's very important for a podcaster. And sometimes history doesn't necessarily give you a good story. Sometimes there's tragedy. Sometimes they're just like, there's not really a story here, and you can't make something up. It's history. You have to be factual, right?
This is where I've made some mistakes. Made a few things up. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these are the things you struggle with, that I struggle with too. But I've learned enough about about the process. I'm 55 episodes in, so that means I've written over 108 stories. And all of those come with a lot of research, and all of them come with a lot of context, because I really also like to, in the short period of time that I have to tell a story, I like to kind of give a sense of the world around it too, and what a character, the person that we're focusing on, might have dealt with on a day-to-day basis, or and those are important things, and I think that makes things very interesting. And why I do what I do and why I tell stories the way that I do is, like, if you open up your history book at school, or most books that you find on a bookstore shelf, there's going to be a lot of really recognizable names, like famous people that, like, and it's the same people. It's like, oh, you know a lot about, you can find anything you want about George Washington, like, face it, super easy, right? And it's that way with all sorts of people. But think about how many people there are in the world, how many people have come and gone in the world, and all of those people have stories, and all of those people probably did interesting and impactful things, some more so than others. But even some of the ones that did really great things, or really important things, or have really memorable names, we don't necessarily know why or who. So when I was talking about the Hubble Space Telescope, I used the lens of Edwin Hubble, who, his life never lined up with the Hubble telescope. They just made an incredible piece of scientific equipment and named it in his honor. Yeah, and the reason I kind of got excited about it, and I know a lot of people, a lot of kids who are this way too, is he lived in my town. He lived in Kentucky, not for a period of time, and those are the things that are fascinating, because immediately I felt a connection. Like, I can walk down the street past the house that he lived in, and so all of that is really fascinating, and his story is fascinating, and I could nutshell it if you want, or
I am interested in the let's go to the story in just a second, because I'm kind of curious about, I'm watching your face light up. By the way, I don't know if you watched me. I'm now walked around the corner.
You're in the shade.
Into the shade. It's quite pleasant here. And there's an expression that you made that I'm familiar with, which it's, I don't know, there's a hungriness to it and a delight to it when you discover a narrative that that plucks something personal, but at the same time epic. It's unstoppable at that point. You've got to discover it in its entirety as much as possible, but also find a through line or a golden thread that can connect to as many people as possible. And so, can you tell me, before we get to the story of Hubble, your story in discovering this story? What was the moment in which you were like, "That's it. I want to know more about that"?
Well, I'm lucky enough to have a really, really, really good friend. One of my best friends of all time is from a little town in Kentucky, actually near the border. It's West Virginia, so but not
Okay.
far from
Okay.
Virginia. Um, uh, Called Paintsville, Kentucky. It's tiny.
Okay.
And he moved to Louisville. I met him. We became really great friends. We played music together and all that sort of stuff. And he, like, after graduating college, like, found this love of astronomy, and he is now an assistant professor. I mean, he's a full astronomer, research professor at the University of New Mexico, and he does research on the Hubble telescope. He actually
Right.
logged time on this
Okay.
Hubble Space Telescope. And so that was really, really amazing because I could ask him questions, and
Mm-hmm.
he's been really great to talk to about the whole thing. Um, but also, to be honest, the other part of the story is about the telescope that Edwin played a big role in, the one that he actually lived during, which was the largest telescope in the world at that time. And the story came from one of my listeners who lived nearby, and they were like, "This story is really cool. How they made this telescope is really cool." And then I realized that Hubble was connected to it because he was the first person to use it. He was the first
Yep.
person to take a photographic image with it. And so all of that connection, like, just, yeah. So I mean, it's like you say, like, there was that golden thread that connected all of those things.
Oh,
But I mean, the big linchpin to me is like, well, he lived 2 miles from my house, you know?
right. Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's like storytelling is so personal, and no matter how far away the story is, no matter how strange the circumstances, there's always something to get a toehold in. There's always
Yeah.
something like, oh, I like to dance. Oh, lemons, yes,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Can I just make our constellation a little bit more dense, and then we'll go back to Hubble with the story that I did for. We did a series called 50 Stories for 50 States. I feel like I reached out to you with
We
one of
did.
them.
You
Yeah.
did. I helped you with one about Lewis and Clark. That was about
Yes,
four
that
years
was
ago.
it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, and it focused in on the enslaved man
York.
York.
Hmm.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that was such
So,
a satisfying experience.
so
Um,
that was great. And by the way, York also lived about 2 miles from me. So I felt a very personal connection to that story too. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, this story that I did for Arizona was about the Lowell Observatory
Oh yeah.
and the discovery of what was then Planet X and then became Pluto. And just like your friend, um, it was actually discovered not by Lowell, although he tried and tried and tried. 15 years after he died, it was actually discovered by this fellow who was a complete amateur. He dug a hole in his backyard in Kansas and built his own telescope. Wanted
Oh.
to go to college for astronomy, but then, the wheat crop all froze, and so they couldn't afford it. So he built his own and then realized the most expensive part, the lens, he couldn't buy. So he learned how to grind his own lenses and made a lens and built a telescope and was able to see everything except for Planet X, and wrote for advice to the Lowell Observatory. Sorry, there's a bobcat moving by now. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It's really up on me now. It's right there. Um, and and they wrote back and offered him a job
What?
because
That's awesome.
yeah, and he
Yeah.
found it within months. He found Pluto. They've
Holy
been
cow,
looking
that's an
for
awesome
like
story.
2 decades. Yeah. So this kind of relationship between amateur and professional sounds like it shows up with your story too.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, it also the big you mentioned like that a lot of times we connect to stories because of just some random detail in the story, and that was one of the things that I really liked about Edwin Hubble's story that I tried to bring out. So I mean, he grew up in Missouri and Illinois, and when he was young, his dad wanted him to be a lawyer. That was the cards were on the cards were on the table. It was done. But when he was like 9, his grandfather took him out to a pasture with his telescope and showed him the stars. And it awakened something in him, and it was remarkable. And I think his grandfather wound up giving him that telescope or a telescope. But so when he started college, he was planning to go, for a master's degree for law. So he did take mathematics courses and astronomy courses, but he actually was on the Chicago Maroons college on their basketball team. And in 1907, 1908, and 1909, they won the national championship 2 years in a row.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And
wow.
I mean, the roster was only 6 people. So he was a big part of the team.
Yeah, he's serious.
Yeah. So, and he was a boxer. He did all these sorts of things. I mean, just incredible.
How tall? Do you know his height?
Not very tall.
Okay.
I mean, no, okay. I don't think basketball players were very tall back then.
Okay.
But I mean, maybe he was 6 feet. I don't know. But so anyway, he winds up going to Oxford in England to study law, like his dad was. And his dad was an insurance salesman and or worked in insurance. And he moved the rest of the family, to Shelbyville, Kentucky, which is about 20 minutes from, or about 30 miles from Louisville. Because he wanted a small town life for the rest of his kids coming up. And his dad actually had a really cool job. I don't know if you've ever messed around with Sanborn maps. They're really, really cool, huge maps that they did of almost every city. And they're fire insurance maps. So they have real incredible detail. And people drew those by hand. It's amazing. Yeah. And you can go to the city archives and flip through them wherever you go. It's super cool. So that's what his dad did. And then they moved to Louisville, I guess to be closer to the insurance company. And then his dad passes away. And so he finishes up at Oxford, and he comes to Louisville and lives to help take care of his siblings. And he gets a job teaching high school. There's a city right across the river. Louisville's on the Ohio River, and take a bridge and you're in New Albany, Indiana. And he taught high school there, and he taught Spanish and math, and I think he led an astronomy club. But he coached their basketball team, and he coached them to the Final Four state tournament, in 1914, 1915.
Oh, I hope his big speech was, "Let's shoot for the stars." Yeah. something in the movie that would get cut from the script. But
yes, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I'm surprised. Maybe there is a movie. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so then it was a sad thing, but also because his dad passed away, he felt like he could pursue his dreams. He wanted to be an astronomer, and so he did. And he was one of those people that was able to stand on the backs of people that came before, and there was a lot of research. And his big discovery, his big step forward for humankind was that he realized that the universe was expanding. And he started to put that together very, very quickly, very young. And spent a lot of his time kind of proving that and working towards that goal. And through that, he met George Ellery Hale. So this is the other part of the story that I tell. And George Ellery Hale was older than him, and he was the guy who had built the first telescope that Hubble had used, which was in Yerkes. It was the Yerkes Observatory north of Chicago. And then the rest were out in California because, you go out on the West Coast and there's not as much light pollution and all that, so you can see so much more.
Yep.
And he
a lot
made
of sky out there.
Yeah, and so he had there are two different types of telescopes. There's a reflector telescope and a refractor telescope.
Yeah, that was a big moment in the Arizona story, was when they were a telescope, and that's what Trumbull used to find Pluto.
Yeah,
that comparative.
Yeah, you can make them so much larger. And they can support themselves. I explained it in an episode. Actually, my astronomer friend helped me explain that aspect in the story.
Yeah.
Where I kind of whiffed it. He helped. But anyway, so towards the end of the story, Hale wants to create the largest reflecting telescope in the world. And so the mirror, the lens was going to be 200 inches in diameter, which is gigantic. And it's the middle, so he proposes it, and he gets some funding. I think Carnegie or some one of the great funders in the world.
Thank you.
And but they have to figure out how to make it, and so they turn to a place in Corning, New York, called they make Corningware. And if you go to your kitchen and you open your drawer, you'll probably find a dish that's made of Pyrex, which is a glass that won't doesn't expand, so you can microwave it. You could put it in the oven to bake a casserole or make brownies. Well, that was new at the time, and that was what they settled on to make this mirror. But no one had made this gigantic piece of glass before. It was just enormous. And it took a monumental and Herculean effort from all sorts of people, everyday people, townsfolk. There was one moment where like they had to bake it in an oven for months so that it would like burn out the impurities and stuff. And there was the town flooded, and they were going to lose electricity in the factory. And so everyone in the town came out and was sandbagging and scooping water, trying to save this. And it was like the middle of the Great Depression. But it was like this just groundswell of enthusiasm and optimism around this scientific instrument that was going to show them the universe. So, it's just such a cool story to me.
I apologize. I didn't realize that this was still recording sound. So that
The backing up.
the beeping was profound, but you were you were unflapped by it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want everybody who's here with us right now and then who watches this later just to notice something that Mick and I have in common, which is we just love telling stories. And we get so invested, and there's a whole world. Those of you who have committed to Sparkle Stories, and we're so grateful. There's a whole world of storytellers that and Mick's the real deal when it comes to historical stories. I have recently come to terms with the fact that I'm a good storyteller, but I'm no historian, and didn't go according to historians' principles, but Mick does. And so in our podcast for Storying Project, which we'll be doing soon, we'll take that up, and that'll be something for you all to listen to as well. My device here is about to be out of energy, and our time's out anyway. But in this, on Facebook and on YouTube, you can ask us questions, and we're going to tag Mick. And do you have I forgot to ask. I know Jessica knows this. Do you have a page that's just for the past and the curious, or could it go just to you?
I don't have Facebook at all. It got deleted. Great. It was out of my hands. I can't.
Okay.
Fix it. So I have Twitter.
Congratulations.
I'm happy about it.
Yeah. No offense, Facebook. We're grateful to be here, but we will. Any questions for Mick, we will find him and answer those questions, and then we'll find ourselves over at Instagram as well, so we can interact there and continue this conversation. I'm sorry that we can't keep going because you're a wealth, and we would have several stories overlapping. I'm sure of it.
I bet.
Yeah. So everybody, go listen to Mick's podcast, and we'll let you know when our the podcast for the grown-ups is going to happen, the Storying Project, and let's do more. Let's talk more.
I'd love to. It's great to see you, man.
Yeah, very good to see you. Okay, until next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.